that you are a superhero, that being an empath may seem really difficult now. Like it was a struggle for me growing up, but it doesn't have to be. It is actually your superpower.
Hello, beautiful soul sparklers. My name is Darci Legg with Darci's Mindful Magic, where I support sensitive, empathic students inside and outside of the classroom, making each day better. And today I get to be the one who gets to be interviewed by my friend Stephanie. I'm going to discuss with you what it's like to grow up empathic from my point of view. But before I do, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in the late 60s. I have a twin brother named Derek. When I was born, my parents didn't have an ultrasound. So my brother was a surprise. I also have an older brother who's 18 months older than me and a younger sister who is 20 months younger than me. So in a little over 3 years, my parents had 4 children. I'm sure it was fun times for them back then. When I was in high school, my mom and dad adopted my 3 younger sisters also. I have a big family. Once I graduated high school, I went to school to become a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. And I kind of traveled around a bit before I actually finished up my degree. I finally finished my degree when I was 30 years old and started teaching. I taught first grade for over 10 years, which I absolutely loved teaching first grade. One thing I did not love about it was I was working about anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week and not being compensated for my time. I had a master's degree in education. I had taught for 10 years and I was only making $42,000 a year. I was at that time going through a divorce and thought I needed to make just a little bit more money to support myself since I was no longer had that second income to rely on. Plus, I was getting burned out from working that many hours a week. In walked this lady from across the hall who was a behaviorist when I was teaching first grade, and she told me about Epic. And it just sounded too good to be true. So Epic is this computer program that hospitals install into their computer system, and it's how they document everything in the hospital. So I travel all over this great country right now training Epic, which I absolutely love. However, I miss working with children. My last job, I'll teach about anywhere from 10 to 12 different modules, where they only had me teach one module on my last job. And honestly, they didn't keep me busy. And for a type A personality that I am, it really, really disturbed me that I had so much free time on my hands. So anyway, what I did is I ended up taking a class. Through the 4 Winds, I took a 6-month-long shamanic training class. And before I took that shamanic training class, I had already been doing healing work for years. I had been doing Reiki. Well, my form of Reiki. I took Reiki, but I kind of modified it to fit myself. I started taking healing a little bit more seriously because I had all this free time. And then once I finished with the program, I'm doing now what I love. It makes me so happy. So I'm doing both. I'm working full-time training Epic, which I love that too. And I have my passion that I do in the evenings and weekends, which is supporting children who are sensitive or empathic, because I know what it's like to grow up sensitive and empathic. And sometimes it's not a cakewalk if you're not supported, or you don't even know what it is, or maybe nobody around you understands it. It's difficult. I'm here to help support those that are empathic and sensitive, and this is my true passion, what makes me happy. I also, since I was a teacher, support not only the children, but I want to support teachers on how to help those students in the classroom. Here is my interview. .
Darci, will you share with us what it was like growing up empathetic?
So growing up empathetic in my fantasy world, it was amazing. It was sparkles and fun and happiness and joy and play, but in real life, it was not like that at all. I wish it was, but it wasn't. It was it was harsh. It was hard. It was not easy for me. And I don't want it to sound like I was, abused or my parents were horrible. But as far as being empathetic, people had no idea. I didn't even know what being empathetic was. I hadn't even heard that word or understood the empathy. I knew what empathy was, but being empathic, I didn't know what that was until I was about 40 years old and someone told me I was. But anyway, growing up as a child and being super sensitive was really, really hard for me. I had a sibling that picked on me nonstop. I couldn't be in the presence of this person without this person saying something mean, saying something abusive, physically hurting me. So that in itself is hard. And the fact that I was super sensitive and I took everything personal was really, really difficult for me. It just wasn't easy. I'd like to say it was. And how I handled with everything that was overwhelming is I just shut down. I was so shy. I didn't talk. I never talked in school. I never talked in public. I kept everything inside and I didn't have a voice. Nobody knew what was going on in my head and nobody really knew how to support me in that aspect.
So what was it like feeling so much, but then not having a voice to speak that to anyone?
I felt worthless, to be honest with you. I felt like nobody cared is what I felt like. I felt like I couldn't express who I was and I couldn't say what I wanted and do what I wanted. And so it made me feel worthless, to be honest with you. I had no self-esteem, no confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. And so no validation because you couldn't express it. So no validation. So it brings us into the next question is as that child, how did your parents support you being empathetic or an empath?
Okay. So I made it sound horrible, but they did a lot of wonderful things to support me being sensitive and empathic. One of the things that they did the first thing that comes up was when I was 5 years old, I took piano lessons from this wonderful lady named Mrs. Carmesino. Now, she was the nicest person you could ever imagine. She was this little Italian lady I went to every Tuesday afternoon around 4 o'clock and learned how to play piano until I was 16 years old. That was one of the things I did. Another thing that was really big in my life to support me and my needs is my mom cooked this amazing dinner every night. And I don't know how she did this, but she was a fabulous cook. To this day, I still think she's one of the best cooks I ever have met. And I really didn't appreciate her cooking until I moved out. And then I realized how good she was and how much effort she put into it when I had to do it myself every night. She made these amazing dinners. Not only did she make these amazing dinners every night, we sat down as a family without TV and we sat down and ate this amazing dinner together as a family. And that's when we got to connect. We told stories, we laughed. I don't ever remember there being a mean dinner or a sad dinner time. It was always a joyful time. So every day in my life, I got to connect with my family and have dinner. And sometimes even after dinner, my dad was a big bicycle rider. He rode his bike to work every day. And so after dinner, we would hop on our bikes and go for a bike ride. Those are the two biggest things that I remember that supported me as a child.
So family time was really nourishing for you.
Yes, very.
Yeah. Would that be something that you recommend to kids with empathic kids that are struggling?
Oh, yes, yes. You can't get enough time together. it doesn't mean just sitting there on your phone being with them. It means being with them and doing something that you enjoy together and enjoy being in there, giving them attention.
Yeah.
Yes. Number one thing, I think.
Yeah, because it creates a foundation for feeling safe, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Cool. So if you could go back and tell 5-year-old Darci anything, what would it be?
Oh, there's so much I would tell my little 5-year-old Darci. Like, the first thing I would tell her is everything's going to be okay. I worried so much. And I didn't have a lot to worry about back then, but I did worry so much back then. And I would tell her, go learn to meditate and ground yourself. And even back then in the 70s, nobody that we knew of really meditated and grounded themselves, but I would tell her how to go do it. And I tell her, someday you will stop taking on everybody's worries and problems. I tell her there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I would tell her I love her so much. There's so much to say.
I love it. What would you tell your parents if you could go back and tell the parents? Because I think a lot of times, like, parents are raising empathic kids, and that's really hard too.
Yeah.
Right? So if you could get I remember thinking like, oh, my parents did do a very good job. And then I think of my parents and I'm like, oh man, it must have been really hard. What would you tell your parents if you could go back and talk to the parents who were raising Darci? What would you say to them? What does she need? What could you give her? What advice do you have to them or insights about where she is?
I think I would tell them to encourage me to speak up and, teach me how to have a voice and teach me to be confident in myself and that it's okay to have certain feelings. Like, I was always taught that there's certain feelings that aren't valid and that I needed to push them down. Well, that caused a lot of physical problems in my body that I am now just working through those problems in my life that I feel like if I haven't worked through those problems, they would have turned into cancer, heart disease, something horrible. Well, they were turning into something horrible until I started addressing them. And so I would have told them feelings are valid and people, especially children, need to learn how to validate their feelings instead of just shoving it down and pretending it doesn't happen. That's the biggest thing I would have told them.
Beautiful. Yeah. Awesome. What is a quote or a mantra or something that resonates with you that you want to share with everyone?
I have so many quotes that I love. This was the hardest one for me. The one I'm going to share is from Rumi, or I don't know if you call him Rumi or Rummy, but it is the inspiration you seek is already within you. So be silent and listen. I am one that loves to go, 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 do, fix, fix, fix. And it's really hard for me to sit still and go within and meditate. But I have gotten the best advice from myself, just listening and being quiet and meditating. And sometimes it doesn't happen that day that I want it to, but eventually I could give you an example real quick. Like, even becoming a shamanic healer, I knew I wanted to do something. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And it took me about 2 weeks of meditating to finally hear the solid answer. This is what you need to do. This is your path.
Beautiful. I love that one. And he has so many good quotes.
Oh,
There's a friend of mine had a calendar of quotes from him, like a daily calendar, which is pretty awesome. But I have one more question. If I'm a parent and I'm interested in getting help for my child, what can what can shamanic work do for my child? What is that? How can it help me? Just let's pretend I have no idea what any of that is. Don't describe it to me, but tell me a little bit about how that will support my little one.
Okay, if your little one is struggling with being sensitive, I could help them understand themselves and why they're being so sensitive. And I could help them with that process. I could teach them tools so they wouldn't need me anymore to help them with their sensitivities. If they get overstimulated, I could give them tools that they could live throughout their life, that they could learn. Some of them are physical, some of them they could do themselves. And I could also do energy healing on them to instantly make them feel better too.
Awesome. And you're there to validate them and tell them that what they're feeling is okay, because you've been there, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I definitely know. It's even to this day, it's still sometimes a struggle. I forget that I'm so sensitive and I'm like, oh, that's the reason that happened is because I'm sensitive. So yes, it's always something that's with me for my whole life. Yes.
So if you had one piece of advice, if you had your tagline or your quote, one piece of advice to tell the empath children out there, what would it be right now in this world that is so crazy right now? What would you say to all of them?
There is so much going on right now. The one tagline that comes up into my head is that you are a superhero, that being an empath may seem really difficult now. Like it was a struggle for me growing up, but it doesn't have to be. It is actually your superpower.
Love it. Awesome. You're a superhero. You're my hero. Thank you, Darci.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to me. Stephanie, thank you for interviewing me. I loved the interview. I was honestly really, really nervous being interviewed, but you made it so easy. Thank you, Stephanie. Love you. For the rest of you, if you have any questions, leave it down in the description below. Otherwise, thank you for supporting me by subscribing, selecting the bell, and everything that you do. Keep on sparkling.